Welcome back to Jennifer Broussard Art. Today we're going to continue in the Duck of the Month series and paint this August duck holding a piece of watermelon. I have everything traced onto my pad, my Arches 8x8, cold pressed 140 pound paper. And we have our three colors that we normally use to mix: Quinacridone Rose, Nickel Azo Yellow, and Phthalocyanine Blue by M.Graham. I am going to use 3 silver white brushes, 6 of 4 and a 2 round. So let's get started. Before I start painting, I'm going to use a kneaded eraser and pick up a lot of this graphite. I used a piece of Ceril tracing paper in the graphite color to get it onto the watercolor paper, and a lot of times it will smudge the paper, so it does leave a little bit excess. So I like to take a lot of it off so it doesn't muddy up the colors. I'm going to start by using number 6 round, and I'm going to wet the top of the duck. I'm going to go right over the eye, and I'm going to leave the beak dry. We're going to let this water soak in for a minute while we mix up some colors. And I think I will go ahead and do the bottom too. And I'm going to leave the wings dry. You can find the outline to this duck and all of the ducks of the month on my free Patreon. Just sign up as a free member, and the link will be in the description below. Okay, so this is a pretty good sheen. I'm going to let that work its way down into the fibers, and I'm going to mix up some blues and some purples, some grays. I've got some Quinacridone Rose, a puddle of it, and that's probably cream consistency. If you think about half and half or whole milk, that's what I'm talking about. I'm going to add a little bit of the blue. The Phthalo Blue, a little bit, it goes a long way. And I'm going to leave it kind of unmixed. See how this is not all mixed up into one color? So I'm going to leave it like that. And I'm going to make another one over here and make it gray. So a little bit of Quinacridone Rose and a little bit of Phthalo Blue. And it's making a little bit of a very light purple. So I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, and that will gray it down. And that's a warmish gray, so I'm going to add just a little bit of blue and see what that does. That's a pretty neutral gray. So I'm going to take that gray and I'm going to go around in some places on the duck on the wet paper. So this is dry leading up, and if you take your brush and you go against that line, the wet paper or damp paper will take that paint away, and it will be a soft edge. This is a white duck, so I'm going to be pretty, we're going to be working light in value. I'm going to add a little of this bluey purple right on the paper while it's still wet, and go right under that, right on top of that watermelon. And go on the head. And I'm going to leave a highlight here on the forehead, but I'm going to make a shadow underneath the beak. Bill, beak, whatever it is. Okay. I'm going to lift, actually I'm going to add a little bit of the pink because it's looking very blue. We might end up with a rainbow duck today. Now my highlight got blended in with the water. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to take some of the gray, and right under the duck, this is the front of its little bottom, there will be some shadow. Get a little bit of this blue and add it in here. Get a little of the pink. And you'll end up with a shadow that is showing the three colors that are making up the shadow. I want this little contour to be here to show the legs. And I want one here too. A little bit more of the blue, bluish purple. And I'm just going to add a little bit of gray under this watermelon. And then up here between the watermelon and the wings. I want to do some little flicks to show some texture feather. I grabbed my number 2 to do that, and I'm just I took a little bit of pigment and I put it in the wet, and I'm not going to do any up here. I want to just clean this line up, and don't do this if you have a lot of water on your brush, because you'll flood your paper and you'll kind of wreck the wash. It's all dry, and you can see that it dried a lot lighter than the way we had it when it was wet. That's very typical of watercolor. Now I'm just going to take some of this light gray and I'm going to do the tail. I'm going to take some of it off, and you just rinse your brush out, dab it on a paper towel or whatever you're using, and you have a damp brush, and then that will suck up any extra water that you have. I'm going to do the wings. And then to the wings, I'm going to add a little bit of the blue purple to give them some contour. I think I'm just going to blend that in. You can barely see just a little bit of line there. And then same thing here. I'm going to add a little bit of the blue. Maybe a little bit of the pink too, just to match the rest of the body. Okay, now we can do, so this is dry and this is dry, so we can do the legs, feet, and the bill. So we're going to mix an orange. I'm going to take some yellow. By the way, this M.Graham paint is amazing because this yellow and this Quinacridone Rose has been sitting on this plate for a couple of days, and you can just reactivate it so easily like that. Clear water, get it kind of watery, and I'm going to add some Quinacridone Rose. And I want the orange to be a little more yellowy. This is probably a good orange right here. I'm going to lighten the value a little. Now we have a red orange and a yellow orange, which we will need. I'm going to wet the beak. I have too much water on my brush, so I just dabbed it off onto my t-shirt. I use old t-shirts. And now I can just spread that water around and it will get absorbed into the brush. So now the water is evenly distributed on the bill. And I can take this lighter yellow and fill in the whole bill. And I'm going to keep that light, this little end tip. And now while that's drying, I'm going to come down to the legs and fill those in. I'm going to fill in the whole foot, then the whole leg with the lighter yellow-orange. And again, we're going to do the whole foot and leg. Okay, that's still damp. This is all dry, so we can do the watermelon. I'm going to start with just some yellow. And I want to make a red. This is more pink, it's not really red. So I want to make a watermelon-y red right here. And I'm going to put that on. I'm using my number 2, so it fits in these little corners. Okay, we'll let that dry. And I think while it's drying, I'm going to watch it for when it turns damp, and I'm going to add some little drops of water, just drops of clear water to make it less smooth. This will force a back run. These might have been a little too wet to do that, but we'll see when it dries. Okay, now I think this is dry enough, and I can use this darker orange on some of it. Now, when you have a little too much water, but you don't want to wipe it off, you can wick the water out and keep the pigment on your brush. I'm going to take the darker orange and go up into these points. And I'm going to use a damp brush to soften it. And now I'm getting the whole thing wet with a little bit of this orange. I'm going to take some more of that orange and go along the bottom. In this particular painting, we're pretty much only seeing the top of the bill. So we don't have to make a line for the bottom jaw. Now I'm going to have that go around this little bumpy thing. And I want to add a little bit of this red. And then because the beak is damp, it will be a soft line. Okay, now I can make a dark and do the eyes. And we can also use the same dark for the seeds. So I think we're done with this gray. I'm going to get number 4, and I'm going to turn that gray into a black. I'm going to add some more red. I'm going to add a lot of blue. See how intense that blue is? I'm going to get a lot more red. I'm probably going to run out of red. Yep. I'm going to scooch it over there. And now we have a really, really intense purple, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm going to take this orange and, you know what, I'm not done with the orange. Never mind. We were going to do the feet. So I'm going to take this orange now and I'm going to fill in the webbed part of the feet. We're still going to do this. I kind of got away from myself there. So I want those lines to be soft and to sort of go over onto the toes. And I want these feet to look like they're bent. So I'm going to stop the orange there at the ankle, or what would be an ankle. And I'm going to take some more of the yellow and fill in up here. Okay, same thing over here. There isn't much, it's just one webbed area. Damp brush to soften, and then some of this lighter on top. Okay, now let's continue making this black. I'm going to take some of this orange and put it in there. I'm going to take some more yellow and add it to this. A little more yellow. The yellow a little bit goes a long way too. So be really careful when you're adding yellow because you will overpower your entire mix and have to kind of start at square one. So I have a nice dark. I'm going to load up my number 2 and do the eye. I just love the looks on the ducks' faces. No matter what duck I'm looking at, they always seem like they're looking at you like you're crazy. I just love them. Okay. I think this watermelon looks really good. It's not quite dry though. It's a little bit damp. So I'm going to go ahead and dry that and come back. The watermelon is dry and I want to take off a little bit of red here and there just to mark it up. Because you know when you cut open a watermelon, it's not perfectly red or perfectly pink. It's got white stuff going through it. Not so much black seeds anymore. You can just pretty much get seedless. I think that's pretty good. So I just used Blick Wonder White number 2 scrubber, and it's a stiff brush, and you dip it in water and scrub very gently because you'll mark the paper, and pick up some of the pigment. Now I'm going to use this dark color and wick my brush, and I'm going to put little watermelon seeds everywhere. There. And now I'm going to wet the rind. And actually, I'm not going to wet it. I'm just going to paint it yellow. And now I'm going to make a green. Go right over this gray and get a little yellow. So blue and yellow. And we have a green. I like that green. I'm just going to put it right along the edge and let the yellow take it, if it's damp. If it's not damp, I'll just use a damp brush and soften it. Damp brush. Okay, now same over here. damp brush. And now the last thing I'm going to do is use my Rosemary Co Eradicator Brush in small and clean up some lines. I want to soften these lines. They're just a little too hard because some pigment gathered there and dried. Same with over here. You want to make sure you flip your paper towel around so that you don't transfer pigment from one place to another. I'm just getting the brush wet, getting the excess off, and then gently using it like an eraser. Now here I didn't like this little bump on the head. Okay. And now all we have to do is finish the legs. I'm going to take some of that and add it to this. And I just made it into like a burnt sienna or burnt umber color. And my brush is only damp. There's not really any drops of water on the brush. And I'm going to paint some little wrinkles on these legs. I'm going to go back and forth. And I'm going to sort of highlight, kind of, I don't want to say trace or outline, because we don't want it to look outlined. I guess I'm gonna say add shadow. Let's add a little shadow. There. Okay, let's do the same thing over here. Got a knobby little knee. This needs to have a nail claw. Okay, I'm going to soften that. And now you're done with your August duck of the month. It was much easier than the July one. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.